On September 18, 1931, Japan sabotaged a part of its own South Manchuria Railway, claimed the Chinese had installed a bomb, then used the incident as a pretext to invade Manchuria. Shortly after the invasion of Manchuria, Japan established a puppet state called Manchukuo and invited the already deposed former emperor of China, Puyi, to be the leader of this new state. Although Japan was the actual power behind the throne in Manchukuo, Puyi was still the nominal emperor. Therefore, it is a reasonable question as to why Japan did not simply remove Emperor Puyi entirely and annex Manchuria as a Japanese territory. Japan had already annexed Korea in 1910, so the annexation of Manchuria was certainly an option to further imperial ambitions, gain additional resources, and increase Japanese prestige. Japan had long coveted Manchurian territory and resources. In 1895, after its first victory over China during the Sino-Japanese War, Japan forced China to cede it the Liaodong Peninsula under the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Later, the Japanese cooperated with Zhang Zuolin, a powerful Chinese warlord, to strengthen its control of the northeastern part of China. Japan's relentless effort in pursuing Manchuria was due to its strategic location. Manchuria shared borders with both Russia in the north and Japan's protectorate Korea in the southeast. So Manchukuo was seen as a potential buffer region between Russia and Japan. Therefore, Japan felt strategically compelled to seize Manchuria because of potential Russian threats to its Korean protectorate and Japan itself. Additionally, Manchuria's abundant natural resources, especially iron and coal, also attracted Japanese interest. However, Japan was not successful in annexing Manchuria because Western powers monitored and even interfered with Japan's activities in China. This was the first reason Japan established a puppet state rather than absorb Manchuria as a Japanese territory. As previously mentioned, Manchuria was close to both Russia and Japan, and both powers wanted it. They had even clashed militarily over Manchuria, as the Japanese ambassador to the United States, Hiroshi Sato, noted. Japan had fought two desperate wars on Manchurian soil in 1894 and 1904 to ward off Russia's aggression and to secure Manchuria's own separate existence. Russia was not the only Western power competing with Japan's territorial aspirations. Germany had forcefully landed in and leased Xiaozhou Bay, a port within Shandong, in 1897. Moreover, though Western powers, along with Japan, collaboratively invaded China, they tried to maintain an equilibrium with one another, such that not any one country gained a disproportionately larger benefit than any other country. For example, Great Britain expanded its Hong Kong colony in 1898, shortly after observing German, French, and Russian colonial expansions within China. Due to this delicate balance, Japan could not abolish Manchukuo and annex it into its empire, since Western powers would not allow Japan to be the sole beneficiary of Chinese territory and resources. Although the invasion of Manchuria and establishment of the puppet state of Manchukuo revealed Japan's ambitions to Western powers, Japan still wanted to use independent and liberal Manchukuo to conceal their ultimate aims. The Meiji Restoration had transformed Japan from a backwards and technologically stunted nation into an industrial powerhouse with a military the equal of any Western power. Yet it was ignored and even excluded by those countries because it was an Asian power, not a European one. Therefore, Japan developed a policy of building a greater Asia, and naturally, Japan's position was to bring peace and security to Manchuria. Japan copied from Great Britain's colonization model with minor revisions. Great Britain's stated colonial goal was to bring civilization, prosperity, and freedom to local peoples. As such, Japan also utilized similar words to justify its establishment of Manchukuo. According to Hiroshi Sato, from the Japanese view, they gained nothing but contributed everything, including Manchuria's peace, and development of its transportation, education, and industrial infrastructure. All these contributions would be invalidated in Western eyes and generate criticism if Japan simply annexed Manchuria and exposed that its true intentions were not simply to create an independent and liberal Manchukuo. Lastly, another reason why Japan established Manchukuo, which is a prevailing view in Chinese history textbooks, is that it continued the dismemberment of Chinese territory and, therefore, served as a good starting point for additional Japanese advances into China. This has led to many historians believing that the invasion of Manchuria and the establishment of Manchukuo were just the beginning of Japan's systematic invasion of China. When evaluating the Japanese Army's earlier Chinese campaigns, it was clear they were not satisfied with their previous gains. In 1935, Japan tried to advance southward beyond the Great Wall, forcing the Chinese National Party to retreat even further south. 3 more Chinese provinces, Sui Yun'an, Shanxi, and Shandong, eventually came under Japanese control. Yet in general, the Chinese Nationalist Army chose not to fight against the Imperial Japanese Army due to its own weakness when compared to Japan's forces. And its leadership cared more about defeating the Chinese Communist Party than an outside invader. The strategy for dealing with the Japanese invasion was to trade space for time. 2 years later, in 1937, Japan committed the infamous Rape of Nanking and continued its southern advance into China. Only when Japan finally surrendered in 1945 did its persecution of China end, and the humiliation of Western colonial holdings was swept away as the Communists began taking control.